Jonathan Hausman spat blood into the stream in which he knelt. Red ribbons like ink drops bloomed and were swept away in the current. With his right hand he brought water to his lips to wash the taste of copper from his mouth. With his left hand he kept pressure on the hole in his side out of which more blood seeped. I can't have much more of that to spare, he thought, and then laughed at the irony of it. What he wouldn't give for real blood to bleed. A twig snapped behind him, and Hausman spun around with more agility than a wounded man should possess, drawing his pistol and scanning the trees for his attacker. Movement in the underbrush to his left drew his attention. With unnatural silence, Hausman approached the disturbance, his finger tickling the trigger. Promptly, a small brown lump of fur rolled out from under the bracken and lay at his feet. The lump gurgled and coughed. Hausman holstered his gun and picked it up, recognizing it by its stump tail. "You poor thing," Hausman said. "How did you get here? Where are your brothers?" "It was Lady Hawk," the mouse said. "She stole me from outside the farmer's house. I managed to bite my way free, but the fall..." The field mouse coughed again, its milk-white eyes closed shut and its body folded in pain. Hausman pitied the animal. He knew creatures could die in this place. He had seen it often enough, but he still cringed to think what it might mean. "Hang on, little friend," Hausman said. "I'm almost there. The gate should be just beyond those trees." "It's a myth," the blind mouse said. "Just a fairy tale." It was the same story he'd heard since waking up in a strange bed 75 years ago. In all that time, he hadn't aged a day. What he had done is walk, run, swim, drive, and fly back and forth across what he eventually learned to call his prison. By his estimation, it was a perfect square, each side measuring approximately 210,000 miles. With its vast landscapes, rich resources, and varied people, towns, and cities, it might have been called a paradise. But to Jonathan Hausman, waking up in that bed with no idea how he'd gotten there or even who he was, it was a nightmare. In bits and pieces, his memory came back to him as he wandered the strange land. It was 2 full months before he remembered his name, and another 6 before he realized he wasn't simply making new memories of the places and people he came across, but that they were his memories. There were no strangers. He knew or knew of everyone, and sometimes hundreds of times over. 1,000 memories of his brother became 1,000 incarnations, each leading separate lives in different towns. There were even younger versions of Hausman, all living out the memories they came from. Every book he'd read, every movie he'd seen, every fevered dream or secret fantasy he'd imagined took to life in his prison. And everywhere he went there were whispers, rumors of a portal or a gate that led to another world. Hausman knew it was to this other world he belonged, and that the proof would lie with the gate itself, at the very center of his prison. "I don't know what lay ahead, little one," Hausman said, "but I expect a rough time of it. Are you up for the journey?" The mouse managed only a weak nod. Hausman placed it in a pocket in his satchel and then set his face onward. At the edge of the forest, Hausman could see into a valley, and at the bottom of which stood a hospital, the final piece of the puzzle. The memories came rushing back, the doctors, the diagnosis, the failed treatments, the strange man and his mysterious offer, too fantastic to be true. "I assure you, it's quite true, quite real. But time is against us, Mr. Hausman." "Why me? I'm not special. I'm not rich or famous or important," Hausman said. "It is precisely for these reasons, Mr. Hausman," answered the stranger. Hausman searched for a reason to say no. I need time to think. I need..." "The decision cannot be made without more information, your consent. We are ready to move now," the stranger insisted. Hausman had doubts, a lot of them. But more than that, he wasn't ready to die. He didn't even ask who the recipient was. When he agreed, he was immediately given a sedative, and moments later awoke in a prison of his own mind. They had done it, successfully transferred his mind, his memories and consciousness onto a hard drive. But where was the promised second half of the process? He was supposed to awake in a new body. 75 years spent wandering the corners and passages of his memories. Would the stranger still be alive? Would anyone remember the experiment, or that a man was trapped inside a computer, lost on some shelf in a madman's basement? Forgetting his wound, Hausman ran for the hospital. If there is a way out of here, that's where I'll find it, he thought. As he neared the entrance, he heard a crash in the forest behind him. Hausman turned and blanched. His attacker had returned. A beast of extended proportions, it had the bearing of a man, but none of the beauty or soul. Its features grotesque, its skin pallid, its eyes intelligent and baleful. There could be no mistaking his pursuer, Frankenstein's monster. Hausman burst through the doors, his only chance, his slight lead on the creature. The last thing he remembered was his hospital room, so the portal must be there. Up the stairs he leapt, and heard the monster explode into the hospital below him. Fatigued by endless searching and loss of blood, Hausman dragged his tired body onto the 3rd floor and into his old room. Crashing in the stairwell, the monster almost upon him. Hausman ripped the dividing curtain aside, only to find the stranger facing out the window. A bellow from the hallway announced Hausman's imminent demise. He reached out for the stranger, but found himself strapped to the bed, unable to move. The beast appeared in the doorway, dwarfing the room. The stranger loomed close over Hausman, placing an IV in his arm. The monster's enormous hand stretched out as he lunged for them. Hausman braced for impact. A buzzer sounded, and a single food pellet dropped in front of Hausman. The stranger hovered impossibly large over the prison. Hausman picked up the food with his front paws and began to eat. The stranger checked the wires leading from Hausman's brain to the computer softly humming nearby. 75 minutes, the stranger said, and clicked his tongue. That's your worst time yet. He reached into the square maze and lifted Mr. Hausman, petting the mouse's chin with a gloved finger before ripping the wires out of its brain. The lab mouse shook, then lay still. The stranger dropped the lifeless body into the bin and reached behind him into one of dozens of cages of live mice. Let's try again, Mr. Hausman, said the stranger.